to all of you who.
I have gotten here, Ms. Blakespeare. I apologize for my delay.
Thank you so much for coming. And thank you to all of the electeds for coming and the staff. We're excited to have you here today. It's been a little bit of time since we've had a litter abatement subcommittee, but this is a really exciting meeting because we're talking about the unsheltered population, litter, and Caltrans. And also there's a new state program to help reduce the amount of litter that Caltrans is going to be talking about. So I'm excited by the topics today. So we'll just jump in right away because we have a lot to cover. So the approval of the meeting minutes is first. So I wanted to entertain a motion on that.
So moved. This is Vargas.
Thank you, Supervisor. We appreciate that. Is there a second?
This is Jennifer Mendoza. I'll second.
Okay, thank you so much. We have a motion and a second. Let's go ahead and vote.
Thank you, Chair. I apologize, having some technical difficulties this morning. For the City of Encinitas, Chair Blakespeare.
Yes.
Thank you. For the City of Imperial Beach, Meridina is absent at the moment. For the City of Lemon Grove, Councilmember Mendoza.
Yes.
Thank you. The City of National City is absent. For the City of Poway, Councilmember Frank.
Yes.
Thank you. For the City of San Diego, Councilmember Moreno. I'm sorry, I believe Councilmember Moreno is absent as well. For the County of San Diego, Supervisor Vargas.
Vargas, yes.
Thank you. For the City of San Marcos, Councilmember Musgrove.
Musgrove, yes. Thank you.
Thank you. For the City of Solana Beach, Mayor Huebner. Did we lose Mayor Huebner?
I see her. Hello.
All right, well, in the meantime, I will go on to the City of Vista, Councilmember Green.
Aye.
Thank you very much. And Mayor Huebner, it looks like you're self-muted, but if you'd like to just give a visual yes or no, I'm happy to note that for the record as well.
I also see Mayor Dedina's come on.
Oh, I'm here. Sorry. We're all in a meeting, so I just got back.
It's okay.
Mayor Dedina, would you like to state your vote for the approval of the meeting minutes?
Yeah, yes.
Thank you. And Mayor Huebner?
She's saying she can't hear in the text.
Oh,
Or
okay.
maybe write to her, but we have, I think we have enough votes, right?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Okay. So let's move. We're going to take public comments and member comments at the end because I want to make sure we have enough time for both of these important items. So we'll have our report from Gustavo Delarda. He's the director of Caltrans District 11, and he's going to give us an update on the Clean California Initiative. So I'll just hand it to you, Gustavo, and you can take it from here.
Thank you, Chair Blakespeare, for the introduction. And I'm going to wait a couple of seconds until the presentation is loaded.
Is my screen given out?
There's a blank screen there. The presentation is not loaded.
Apologies, give me one moment. The Zoom's not cooperating.
I can start talking through the first few slides, and then we'll catch up with the presentation. So today, I'm going to be talking, first, just give a brief overview of what the Clean California plan is. And then most of the presentation is going to focus on what we're doing here in San Diego regarding cleaning California and cleaning our region. So Clean California is part of the Governor's California Comeback Plan, and it's an initiative to invest in litter collection, community engagement, and education. There's over $1 billion invested in the state's budget for a multi-year effort that will create an estimated 10 to 11,000 jobs. And this $1 billion includes money for abatement, for state and local projects, for public outreach, and also for engagement. About a third of the money will go to cities, counties, and tribes, as well as transit agencies, to clean and beautify local spaces. So the goals of the program is to reduce litter on our state highways, but also on our local roads, tribal lands, parks, pathways, and transit centers, so public spaces in general. And to beautify our state transportation network through art, litter cleanup projects, particularly in underserved communities in both rural and urban areas. So if we can go up to slide number 4, please. There we go. So along the way, the program is going to create career opportunities, focusing on veterans, students, and also people experiencing homelessness and those re-entering society from incarceration. Let's go on to the next slide. There we go. So our regional plan basically mirrors the statewide Clean California plan, which focuses on 4 key areas. And we call them the 4 E's. The first one is engaging and investment in communities. The second one is expanding litter removal resources. The third E is to enhance the state infrastructure. And the fourth E is education and outreach. So I'm going to go through each one of these specifically for our San Diego region. So let's go on to the first E on the next slide, which is engaging and investing in communities. So this is about a grant program of $296 million that is going to be competitive statewide. The program is to beautify local spaces. And there were a couple of workshops that explained the guidelines, the draft guidelines for the program. One was on September 1st, and the second one was on October 7th. If you weren't able to participate in those for your communities, there's another workshop, a third workshop has been added on November 18th. But also the recordings from the previous grant workshops were recorded, and the recordings are available on our website. So this $296 million is expected to create about 200 or more than 200 projects statewide. The maximum amount of each grant is capped at $5 million, but there is no minimum amount of grant. And there is a match requirement that can vary from 0 to 50%. And I expect our region to be able to compete for these grants and hopefully bring many of these dollars for beautification projects in our community. So hopefully you're all keeping an eye on this, and I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of submissions from our local cities as well as from the county and our tribal nations and transit partners. So let's go on to, before I mention that, the actual call for projects is going to be on December 1st, and the application deadline is going to be on February 1st of 2022. The grants are going to be awarded fairly quickly in the spring because all the work needs to be completed by June 30th of 2024. So it's going to be quick. So let's go on to the next slide. So the second E that I'm going to be talking about is expanding litter removal resources. So this is where we're adding field staff that is dedicated to litter collection, but also contracting with special program crews, also expanding our Adopt a Highway program, and also expanding our partnerships. So let me tackle each one of those. So with respect to expanding our Caltrans crews, we held a job fair in mid-July. As a result, there was a lot of interest from the public. We had many people show up for that 2-day event. And at the end of the 2 days, we made 68 conditional job offers. Since then, we've been able to bring in and train 32 new employees that are part of 4 new Caltrans crews that are every day out there on our state highway system picking up litter. We're continuing the process to try to bring more of those remaining conditional job offers into the state forces. And in addition to that, we were also able to work with our special program crews and add 2 contractor crews, so that we also rely on them to help us in the litter pickup effort. And some of the pictures in there are showing basically the results of those crews and the work that they're doing in the field. So let's go on to the next slide. A few of the events that we've been holding, one of the biggest ones was Coastal Cleanup Day on September 18th. During that day, our maintenance and construction forces did an all hands on deck cleanup during that week, not just during that day, but leading up to that day. And during that specific day on September 18th, we had 6 dumpsters, 4 across San Diego County and 2 in Imperial County, where we received from the public unwanted items that sometimes people discard and unfortunately end up on our public spaces. We also had employee volunteer groups across the county, and I'm gonna be showing some of the pictures in some of the next slides. So in total, because of all these efforts during that day and on the days leading up to that day, we picked up over 5,300 bags of trash, and which translates into 769 cubic yards of litter just on that day alone. And let's go on to the next slide. So our volunteer teams were spread out throughout the county in places like Chula Vista, San Marcos, Lakeside, also cleaning up the San Diego River. Partnering with I Love a Clean San Diego, trying to target some of the hotspots in the region. But we weren't alone. We were also joined by other organizations like Kaiser and the South Bay Sustainable Communities. And there was also a Sandag team helping us clean in Encinitas. So thank you to all the volunteers that participated as part of that. Let's go on to the next slide. On the Adopt a Highway front, on October 1st, our district was one of the 2 districts in the state that started piloting a stipend program. What the stipend program consists of is a $250 payment per cleanup for the organizations that are adopting segments of our highways. So it's very exciting. Hopefully this will spur a lot more adoptions. Right now, since we've been talking about this, we have about 25 pending adoptions. The reason that this is a pilot is because now between October and January, we're trying to work out the details of submitting the checks and all of the paperwork that is associated with that. But this is really available to all the counties in the state, even though here's where we're piloting kind of the method of payment and that kind of stuff. The $250 is per cleanup, and there is 1 cleanup per month. So we've been receiving some questions to the tune of, if I have an organization adopting a segment of the freeway and I have 10 people out there, are we gonna get $250 per person? And no, the answer is no. It's $250 per cleanup. So if you have 1 person or 10 people, you're gonna get $250, and it's 1 per month. This is not also available if people just say, oh, I just want to go clean up a ramp today. Can you give me $250? There's got to be a commitment to adopt either a number of ramps or a segment of the highway to be able to participate in this program. And this will apply also to previous adoptions or adoptions that were already in place before this program started. So this is funded through that $1 billion that I just mentioned earlier. So let's go on to the next slide. So some of the other partnerships and cleanups that we've been doing in San Marcos in early September, we participated in a cleanup organized by Jay Petrek. There were 150 volunteers that collected over 950 pounds of trash across 11 miles of city streets. We joined in the cleanup by cleaning up the ramps on State Route 78, and we removed 153 bags of litter on those ramps. We had 3 truckloads of large items and swept 15 cubic yards of debris that accumulates in our shoulders. So that was very successful. On August 27th, we partnered with Gompers middle school students to clean the area near 94 and near 47th Street in Southeast San Diego. I'm sorry. And we basically had our crews matching their efforts with four of our teams clean up the area near the school. On October 2nd, we participated in Chula Vista on Bikes on Broadway event. And we basically had our crew similar to the other events, cleaning up near that area. And just this Saturday, we had an event, a huge event at Willie Henderson Park. Let's go on to the next slide. And I have a few more pictures on the next slide, hopefully, because this is a fresh event. And there we go. So this was a partnership with 2 districts in the city of San Diego, with Councilmember Stepp and Elo Rivera's districts, District 4 and 9. And there were 12 dumpsters collecting things, all sorts of things, but dividing the litter into electronic waste, tires, mattress recycling, and then general waste, as well as things that could be recycled. It was hugely successful. Our Caltrans crews were cleaning the area near the park and collected 63 bags of trash within the state right away, in addition to all the trash and litter that was collected in the dumpsters. So it was a great partnership, and we're looking forward to doing this with more cities and jurisdictions and as well as districts. So let's go on to the next slide. So this is the third E, and this is about enhancing the state infrastructure. So this is a program that is very similar to the first one that I talked about, that is for beautifying local public spaces. This is to beautify spaces in the state right away. So similarly to the local program, the criteria is being developed. It will be a similar criteria, namely that it will be prioritizing underserved communities in rural and urban areas. And it is a little bit faster than the local beautification program, because that one is supposed to run through middle of 2024. The state one is running through the middle of 2023. So it runs for 2 years instead of 3. Some of the actions that we're doing is we've been engaging with some of the communities. We're looking at identifying projects to cover a number of areas, underserved areas in both San Diego and Imperial County. And some of the proposals will include open spaces, bus shelters, community identifiers, and receptacles for disposal of litter. We expect to have our project selection done by early 2022, similar to the local grant program. So let's go on to the next slide. So this is about the last E, but very important E, and this is about education and outreach. Because to make a long-lasting impact, we need to invest in this. The other programs lapse after 2 or 3 years, but this one is meant to have a much longer impact than that. What we're doing with this program is we're looking at creating a cultural shift and a sense of community pride and responsibility. One of the first things that happened is the launch of a new stormwater campaign. This is not the Clean California outreach campaign. It is a part of it, but this one focused specifically on waterways, and it's called Let's Change This to That. It was recently launched in the last couple of weeks. So you're gonna start seeing some messaging on radio, billboards and ads. And it's focused again on trying to make sure that trash doesn't end up in our waterways. But early next year, by the end of this year or early next year, you will see another campaign focusing on the larger Clean California outreach and education campaign. We're hoping to partner with other agencies and be able to utilize all the events that I mentioned that we've been doing and the events that we will do in the future to promote this and have banners with this and also leverage our events where we have free dumpsters to educate the people about tarping loads and keeping the state clean. Let's go on to the next slide. So I know that there is rain in the way for us and for much of Northern California, well, later today. And that it is very important to make sure that our trash doesn't end up in our storm drains. So I think the next slide, when we get to it, shows how trash can accumulate running through the shoulders into our drainage inlets. And there's also some of the feedback that we've been receiving from the events and spreading the word about Clean California, some of the messages that we've been receiving from the public. Everybody's really excited about this. So let's go on to I think it's one of my last slides for now. So before we go to questions, I wanted to conclude by explain a little bit how Clean California, this $1.1 billion campaign, it's also related to a much larger part of the Compact Plan, which is the $22 billion investment in solving the homelessness issue in our state. And a big part that Clean California can do for that is creating job opportunities for people that have fallen into hard times because not being able to work. So I recently participated with the director of the homeless strategies at the city of San Diego in a USD symposium, and it was about employment opportunities. And we talked about, many agencies talked about the employment opportunities that could be available to people experiencing homelessness. And I talked about our hiring fair and how from a voluntary survey and an anonymous survey that we conducted during that 2-day event, we heard from a lot of the people that were looking for jobs that they had experienced homelessness at some point, or they were currently experiencing homelessness, as well as the fact that many were trying to get back into the job market following incarceration. So the Clean California does play a big part in the issue of homelessness in our state. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that in the next segment of this meeting, but I wanted to end with that message, and I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you so much, Gustavo. You know, what's interesting is that when we started this litter abatement subcommittee, none of this was happening at the state level. I do think us having the committee actually impacted the creation of, you know, the states seeing this as a priority. I think it's happened, obviously an issue all over the state, but there's such a tremendous amount of resources available now that was not available a year and a half ago. So it's really exciting to consider that we might see a changed reality on the ground. Maybe we're starting to see it just barely incrementally, but it's not been substantial yet. And that cultural shift is critically important, as you talked about at the end. So I do see two of my colleagues have their hands up, so I'm going to go ahead and call on them. Mayor Dedina.
Yeah, no, thanks. First, I want to thank the chair of this committee for helping make it happen, but also Gustavo. I do appreciate, I know how challenging it's been managing all the different elements of this, but also using this committee and using the pressure that we gave you to help make all of this happen at the state level. It's a remarkable sort of example of top-down, bottom-up policymaking. And I have to be fair, I do see the change on the ground, and I know they're really focused. I see those guys out on the freeways a lot. It just shows you how pervasive the problem is that, the minute they clean something up, it's like people start throwing trash everywhere. And obviously the issue of these, the homeless camps and all the whole strategy of addressing that is something we just talked to Mayor Gloria about and Supervisor Vargas right before this. So I know the challenges that they have to deal with. So we've thrown everything at you, Gustavo, but I think you've handled it remarkably well. And I appreciate your capacity to try to figure out how to make it move forward in the giant ship that we call California bureaucracy, that you have to steer very, very, very slowly to get in the right direction. So we're going there. And obviously, I know that some of us would like to have it go quicker, but we're on the right path. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Huebner.
Thanks very much. And thank you, Gustavo. I have a question about the difference between the two programs that you mentioned that were grants for infrastructure. The first was Engage and Invest, and the second was Enhance State Infrastructure. So is there a distinction between the types of projects that you can present?
Yes, so let me clarify that. So the first program is for areas outside of the state highway system. So it's for local public spaces. That's where cities can apply for that, the county, tribal lands, or transit agencies. The second program is not an application grant program. That is something that Caltrans will take onto ourselves, identify areas on the state highway system within our district, and we're going to apply for money to be able to beautify some of the areas ourselves. So the second program is not for cities or counties, or it will impact cities and counties because every state highway is part of a community, right? But it's more about doing the similar type improvements, but on the state highway system, versus the first one. It's really a grant program where a city like yours can get the money and do something in a public space within your city, outside of the state right away.
Okay, thank you. So you featured the art wall under our I-5 expansion, and next to that was a really beautiful photograph of some art underneath a large tunnel, and that gave me an idea because ours is pretty bad. That it's a large, bridge over there, wide and dark, and so I'd like to talk to you offline to give you an idea of one of the Caltrans projects that I have in mind. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Green.
Thank you so much, Chair. And I definitely want to thank you for putting this committee together. I know we serve together on RISWA and, talk about recycling and household hazards and things, but we always also talk about litter abatement. And this is a huge thing. And I really appreciate you putting me on this committee. I just wanted to speak to Gustavo and basically thank you. You spoke about the 78 corridor being cleaned up and some of these funds being used for that. And in my city in Vista, off of Emerald and off of Vista Village Drive, we had very large encampments and a whole lot of litter that was abated. And I just want to tell you thank you for that. And thanks for staying on top of it. It is kind of like a revolving door as far as the, cumulative amount of trash. And I think the strategies that we have in front of us are really going to be effective. But I just want to let you know that from a ground level here, I see it working. I see change happening and my community sees it. So we definitely appreciate it. And I do think this committee has really helped light a fire at the state level. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Councilmember. Gustavo, I wanted to ask a question. Is there a list of locations that Caltrans is considering for the state infrastructure projects?
Of areas that we're considering, it's not final by any means, and it will be final after Sacramento basically receives all the locations from throughout the state. We are trying to focus on underserved communities throughout both San Diego and Imperial County.
Okay. Okay, so there's not a list that's publicly available. You're just collecting different ideas. Oh, I think you're on mute.
We are collecting ideas we have been collecting ideas from local jurisdictions, but the list won't be finalized until early next year.
Okay, but if anybody wanted to submit an idea, could they just email you? Yes.
Office, and we will consider it.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, good. Well, thank you. I know you're also on this next panel, Gustavo. So this is about homelessness. So I'm going to introduce the next panel, and we have Hafsa Kaka from the City of San Diego, followed by Lahila Maddox from the Regional Task Force on the Homeless, and then at the end, after those two, I think we have Gustavo coming back to talk about this topic. So I will hand it over here to Hafsa. I apologize if I'm not pronouncing your name right. Hafsa.
Hi, my name is Hafsa Kaka, and thank you for inviting me to present today and to debrief about some of the efforts in the city of San Diego with this new administration, Mayor Gloria's administration, as it relates to the new department and our first big initiative. So I'm honored to be the new director of homelessness strategies and solutions with this new department empowered by the mayor. And one of the biggest initiatives that we first launched is the partnership with Caltrans and a new provider that we've brought into the collective provider base here in the city of San Diego called CityNet to go ahead and work on this comprehensive multidisciplinary response on homelessness encampments. So with that being said, you all may be privy to the press release that went out last Monday, and we're so excited with this wonderful partnership with Caltrans and all of the funding that's coming down from the state. And we want to make sure that we elevate this work from a people-centered approach. So as you know, Mayor Gloria has really centered the humanistic aspect of addressing homelessness, which also brought me here. And so it's really important that we put outreach at the forefront. What we've done as part of our strategy as a solution and in partnership with this new project is we've contracted with an organization or a nonprofit called CityNet. CityNet is new to San Diego, but not new to the work in homeless outreach, and has been around in Orange County, Riverside, LA, and Santa Barbara, and I've had a pleasure of working with them. They've been in inception since 2005 and have experience working particularly with multi-jurisdictional areas in terms of homeless response system. What we did is we went ahead and we executed a contract to increase 3 teams of 2 plus a field general to dedicate this outreach particularly to the Caltrans team. Caltrans and the city have been in conversation from the operations sector since last month in building up their dream team and our dream team. And so now that we are fully staffed up, Caltrans will have the support of CityNet. And this is really important point that we're not leveraging or taking away from existing outreach provider base, because we know how important the work is with boots on the ground and addressing it proactively from that first initial engagement point and then handing it to Caltrans. We want to make sure that we're able to offer the supportive services, the resources, housing, documentation, the essential engagement and response skills needed to be able to help persons experiencing homelessness get off the street and accept assistance and support. So we have been in the phase of ramping up, and the teams did have an opportunity to go out last week with the local Caltrans and really get to know some of the high-risk areas. This partnership also entails communication, policy procedures, scheduling, and of course, the qualitative and quantitative data that's necessary to show the success. Our contract is going for 9 months with CityNet, and the city is directly contracting. And what's important to say is that the CityNet provider is also going to be and well formed with the existing nexus of system we have. So we've done an introduction and continuity of care with the San Diego Housing Commission and the Coordinated Response Center for Intakes. So CityNet goes out there, they're connecting with folks so that Caltrans has an opportunity to do their part. And as folks are connecting with CityNet, they are connecting with our existing nexus of system of care, San Diego Housing Commission, and getting connected to Father Joe's, PATH, Alpha, the shelter resources, and even family reunification. So we're really excited about this, and we're also very much excited that this could potentially be a model for the rest of California, because it's dedicated outreach teams for Caltrans that goes proactively and in continuity with the Caltrans outreach teams. The objective is to ensure that as many persons are able to accept the services first and foremost, and we understand that this might not always be the case. And so this is why the provider will go out and continue to engage, and this is why that capacity and building that capacity is very important. The other thing I want to acknowledge is that we're really looking forward to, I believe this week is when there's going to be additional encampment funds coming from the state, and I believe it's going to be due in December. So the regional response is going to be something that we're really interested in. I've had a wonderful opportunity to speak to some of the folks on this and the teams from folks that are on this conference today from our regional different cities around on how the city of San Diego is responding. So we hope to continue the conversation. We hope to collect the data, and the teams are boots on the ground as we speak, working in tandem with Caltrans. So that's pretty much how the update is. This is fresh, so I don't necessarily have a PowerPoint, but I hope that in the future I'll certainly have, once we've commenced and have gained some momentum, on pictures and data and the narrative of people experiencing homelessness and how this has helped them. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, so it sounds like what you're saying is that the dedicated outreach team, the difference between this and what San Diego's already doing on the city streets is that they're able to go into the Caltrans right of way. And so, but the actual thing that's being offered is the same, right? Which is connection to services. And I mean, there's not a requirement that people leave the Caltrans right of way. They're allowed to stay there if they want to decline services. Is that the case?
So the idea is to really empower and engage folks to accept the services. As we know with homelessness, it's very difficult to force folks into accepting services. We want to be able to engage and really allow folks to be able to learn about the programs and services and empower them to accept services.
Right. But there are ways to suggest that the Caltrans right of way is not an acceptable place to be staying.
Of course, the education is really, really important, and teams are educating that this is not a safe area and really empowering them with the fact that there is a safer place to stay with shelter, and if there's family reunification, doing family reunification, offering the meals and a warm place to stay.
Okay, and so it sounds like it's accurate that it is, the difference is that it's in the Caltrans right of way. That's the main difference. I mean, the services being offered are not different here than they are on city streets.
Correct. This is a partnership with Caltrans, so we're making sure that teams are going out together and working to ensure that folks are safe and that folks are getting the services that they need.
Okay, and is this only taking place in the city of San Diego with CityNet, or is it in like the county jurisdictions or the other jurisdictions?
This is a contract with the city, so it's in the city.
Okay, and is there any additional approach to people who don't want to leave? Like, isn't there a notification period, and then Caltrans has a process for basically removal?
You're referencing abatement. There is an encampment abatement policy, and we're working through that. But again, what we really like to elevate in this process is the fact that we are now making available an additional outreach team to help folks establish those rapport, get housed from dangerous situations, and we're also expanding our shelter capacities for that population as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Supervisor Vargas?
Thank you, Mayor. I was just going to say, well, thank you, Hafsa, and we haven't met in person, but we've met at the Continuum of Care Board because I serve on their Regional Task Force for Homeless. I'm the vice chair as well, but I just wanted to share that maybe there's an opportunity for the county to also come in and give you an update on where the connection is, because we have just budgeted about $48 million and I think $85 million as well from the rescue plan for some of the issues addressing the unsheltered population. And we have a whole new Department of Homeless Solutions and Equitable Communities. So maybe they can come and also give an update on where we're at, or happy to do it myself at our next presentation. But I know that they're working closely with Hafsa in this role and making sure that we are being supportive in those efforts as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Supervisor Vargas. And I do hope to meet you in person. And thank you for that. Your team, your new office of the Homelessness Solutions and Equitable Solutions has been a great partner. And we've been in conversation, if not daily, weekly. And we know that there's also been some robust outreach from the Behavioral Health Department, which is always very much appreciated.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you, Hafsa, for coming today, and I invite you to stay to the end if you can, if there are questions after all three people have gone from the panel. So I think we have next Lahila Matix from the Regional Task Force on the Homeless.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. Yes, so my name is Lahila Matix. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the Regional Task Force on Homelessness. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what the COC is, who we are, what we do, and how it kind of applies to a lot of the things you folks are talking about today. And so while some of you may know what a continuum of care is, generally speaking, there are 44 continuums of care in the state of California, and they all look differently. We kind of have a saying of when you see one, you see one. We are all structured differently, though we have the same mandates and things that we are required to do. How those mandates are operated and implemented can vary widely. And so we want to be able to share today, how we operate in San Diego and how we can partner with all of you. Next slide, please. So RTFH is a nonprofit organization. Again, we serve as the lead planning, data, and policy agency for San Diego's Continuum of Care. Basically, what that means is that we are charged to really establish a regional community vision and goals for preventing and ending homelessness in San Diego. We really promote and fund, solutions, initiatives. We really take a look at best practices, of course, all using data to support what is moving in our community around the homeless response system. As the Continuum of Care, we are a planning body, and so we really coordinate housing and services for homeless families and individuals. And we have a regional responsibility, right? Some of you have asked, are things in the city? Where are they happening? And so for the Continuum of Care, things that we work on and partner with are really to impact our entire region. While we may support or start things in particular areas, like working with the city on something, our goal is always to expand and replicate throughout our entire region. Next slide, please. So our primary goal of why we exist is to create a system in San Diego in which someone who may experience homelessness, and that it's rare, brief, and non-recurring. And many of you may hear that often, and we really try to talk about what that really means. And when we are trying to ensure that we have a homeless response system that is rare, and so that means that as few people are experiencing homelessness as possible, that it's brief, and so that means that when someone does experience, that it's really short, that we have a system that then addresses their needs quickly and rehouses them. And then that we have a system in which it's non-recurring. And so that should it occur, that it happens, just one time and may not ever happen again, or that they have the resources and the support, again, for it to be really, really brief. Next slide, please. So these are just a lot of the things that the Continuum of Care is responsible for. We are known or responsible for the point in time count, which many of you are familiar with and participate in with us. We also administer the Homeless Management Information System, not only for San Diego, but also for Imperial County. And then we also operate the Coordinated Entry System. And then largely for our region, we're also responsible for the collaborative application. And that application is what draws down the federal funding from HUD to our providers in our community to address homelessness. And then in connection with that, we are responsible for monitoring the system and program performance. And then lastly, the bottom row is really about some of the things that we do a lot of here in San Diego, especially in the last couple of years in partnership with the county, the city, and many of our other cities. And it's really about policy advocacy and research. And we use data to inform that and help us to move, again, some of these initiatives through our community. In 2018, we became a direct funder with the Homeless Emergency Aid Program and also the recipients of, back then, one of the largest youth homeless demonstration grants from HUD of about $8 million. And then again, we are really here to promote best practices and training throughout our region. Some of the things you may be familiar with associated to that are like rapid rehousing standards and the learning collaboratives that we do throughout the region that our providers participate in. Next slide, please. So as you guys have kind of talked about again today, how how all of this is connected, where is funding going? How does all of that work? Are we coordinated? Who's doing what, when, where, and how? And part of that comes down to having a regional plan. And that's one of the things, I was asked to talk about today is where are we with that regional plan and how is that going to help our community as we move forward? Having a regional plan is really, really important when we try to ensure that we have a successful homeless response system and to ensure that we can make homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring. The COC has been working to develop a regional plan for a couple of years now. We had started back in 2018 with focused strategies, and then we kind of put that on pause for a little bit as the city of San Diego was working on their city plan. And RTFH was part of that leadership team to work on that. And now we're at a point in which it's really critical that we have a regional plan as the continuum of care. Next slide, please. So the purpose of the regional plan is really, again, to have this guiding document that helps us basically row in the same direction. It helps us to identify what our strategies are, what the key challenges are in our region. It identifies key components of best practices, the populations that we want to make sure we address. Our regional plan has 5 people and 5 system goals that we will be working towards. And then it also incorporates the ability to identify where our needed housing interventions are, both regionally and sub-regionally. And so last week, our COC advisory board did adopt our regional plan that really talks about our vision and our purpose and the core principles and goals. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to read through all of these, but I'm sure you guys will have this shared with you so you can take some time. And if you have questions, certainly reach out to us. And we can answer any questions that you may have. But our vision, core principles, and goal is really about ending homelessness across the San Diego County and region, really using a housing-focused, equity-driven, and person-centered system approach. And so these principles and goals and system goals have been taken, through a couple of documents, both at the federal level, the state level, the local level. Many of our cities, right, have kind of their own plans. And so we really wanted to make sure that we incorporate all of those and really have a larger regional plan that folks, again, can kind of plug into within your local jurisdiction and be able to achieve some of these goals and system goals. And that, again, we're all trying to be aligned and moving towards the same thing and trying to work towards the same goals. Next slide, please. So the last thing I want to share with folks is really some of the things that we do that are, while they may occur in other areas throughout the state, really something that we here in San Diego have really tried to do strongly, and that's around policy and advocacy. Because as you all have talked about earlier, right, and some of the work you folks have done and how that's now impacting at the state level around funding and this political will and kind of this movement. And that's kind of been happening in San Diego over the last couple of years as we really kind of coordinate, as we align our efforts with the county and the cities. And our role as the continuum of care is to help that at the provider level as well, and really work with all of our, our stakeholders to, again, to move in the same direction. And some of those that are relevant to this conversation today are around our unsheltered policy and encampment guidelines and our street outreach standards. And back in January of 2020, our 31-member COC board and the Sheriff and Police Association unanimously passed the unsheltered policy and encampment guidelines, which is really a huge accomplishment for the COC advisory board in our community. Again, we have a 31-member board. It's one of the largest boards. And it's really, really important that we have, these standards that help us move and address that work. And it allows, right, all of these things that are happening now to kind of plug into those guidelines and standards so that, again, we're working in the same direction. One of the things that the COC advisory board is able to do, or the COC is able to do, is to really bring in national experts to help our community move this work along and understand how to implement things, not just kind of have a tool that sits on the shelf, but really be able to implement and start initiatives. And in this next column, you can see some of those initiatives that we do here. The COC awarded about 25% of our homeless emergency aid program funding to street outreach, again, to really start to engage at a larger level, on a more consistent basis with our unsheltered population. We also co-facilitate the Our Home meeting with the San Diego County. And this is a platform for all of our outreach workers who get together, regardless of the funding source, again, to ensure that we are having the same communication, that we're really looking to leverage our funding in the most effective way, and working together with our unsheltered population. Our community engagement efforts have really increased, again, both in partnership with the city, the county, and the Housing Commission. And then one of the initiatives we brought in 2020, and then significant work that's been happening over this last year, is Built for Zero, and that is to target ending veteran homelessness. And then we are expanding that to youth as well. And so we started in the city last week at our COC advisory board. They did adopt the binding list policies and procedures after we have kind of certified the data from the Built for Zero. And then again, we will move over the next year to expand that throughout the region to our other cities as well. And then I want to highlight the committee work that we have, if folks aren't aware. So our COC advisory board, we have standing committees which help ensure that the responsibilities of us as a COC move forward. But we also have ad hoc committees that can be established by our COC advisory board of recommendations from the community or our board members to address specific areas. And so we currently have 3 ad hoc committees that are doing some tremendous work. And one is addressing racial equity. So it's the ad hoc committee on addressing homelessness among Black San Diegans. We have an ad hoc committee on addressing homelessness among our older adult population, as we see in the data that continues to increase for first-time homelessness and our older adults experiencing homelessness. And then we have an ad hoc committee for addressing health and homelessness, and that's the intersection right between our health system and those experiencing homelessness. And so again, this committee work allows us to address specific tasks or initiatives in our communities to help solve, homelessness for these particular populations. And I think that's the last slide. Next, I think so. So this is my contact information. I can answer any questions, but if you have anything afterwards that you think of, or in reviewing the documents, or have questions about the regional plan, you can certainly reach out, and we can have, because it's a very, very high level, we can have additional conversation if you have questions about any of the documents that we have out.
Okay, thank you. I know, this is really the litter abatement subcommittee, and I want to make sure that, we're somewhat talking about the topic that people are here for. So I appreciate, the background. I know there's a lot of complexity. We're eager in our city to have seen the change at the county level that is dedicated on focusing on this problem. And I continue to await real change. So, and I just had a meeting with county staff today to talk about, because we need more permanent supportive housing. We need a clearer path. And there are I've participated in lots of meetings where this kind of information has gone over, and sometimes you can kind of lose your way about where are we and where are we going? And just to be really kind of straightforward in where we're trying to go, which is to have fewer people living unsheltered. And so finding drug addiction, mental health, places for people to live, and the role of the county in helping facilitate that. There's so much state money now. So, I know things are preliminary and things take time to develop. So I'm, continue to look forward to seeing that progress.
Yeah, and that's the purpose of the regional plan, is kind of have one, it's one document, while it's a large document, there is a one pager that goes along with it. Again, to kind of establish those things, as you're saying, Mayor Blakespear, is to have that, how do we use this money, right? The largest investments in the state and federal than ever before. And how do we use them impactfully so that we see change, right? Because visibly, that's what folks are seeing on the streets. That's visibly what folks are experiencing. And so despite all of the things that are happening on this other side, visually, this is still the experience of people and still the experience of our community members. And how do we address that? And so, we have a stronger partnership with the county. Again, Supervisor Nora Vargas sits as a vice chair for the COC Advisory Board, and it's to help, leverage those funds and those resources together for the encampments, for the abatement. We've used a lot of our funding as the COC to support some of those efforts, in connection with the county and in some of the plans that Hafsa's talking about as well. And so, achieving that is our common goal. Yeah. And so we have the funding, right? There is the state encampment funding that's coming out. And so we are trying to work together to, to identify a way that we could successfully apply for those funds, because it is a competitive process. So us working together in partnership with the county and the city will be critical to bringing those funds into the community to address, litter and abatement here in San Diego.
Yes. Okay. Great. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And I think Gustavo wants to talk about this topic as well.
Yes, thank you, Chair Blakespear. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Perfect, thank you. I heard maybe I had some mic issues earlier. So yeah, I wanted to start by thanking Mayor Gloria and Hafsa for the program that the city launched. It is a game changer in the sense that with these 3 dedicated teams, now we're able to respond to encampments and provide the services that the unsheltered community needs to come out of homelessness. Otherwise, without the outreach, what we're doing is we're moving people around. We're removing an encampment and it will pop up somewhere else, or it'll pop up in the same place after a while. So now having this dedicated, Caltrans does not have outreach services, and we rely on the locals, and we always have. And we appreciate also everything else that the county, as well as the smaller cities, have done for us so far. But we always realize that when we ask for their help to provide outreach on encampments in the state right away, they're also spreading the resources thin with respect to other work that they're doing within their jurisdictions. So how this is a game changer is because the city now has a dedicated contract, 3 teams that are going to address encampments specifically within the state right away. So that is a huge success for us. With respect to encampments, obviously we receive a lot of calls. People want us to remove the encampments, and our response varies. And by that I mean that when we become aware that there's an encampment on the state right away, the first thing that we have to do is assess what is the risk level of that encampment to the unsheltered population or to the traveling public. If it's a matter of life or death, we're going to respond and remove that encampment as soon as possible. There is not much time for outreach. Even we try to do same day outreach, but we will remove that encampment if it's inside of a bridge, if it's in a waterway and there's a threat of rain, and all of a sudden somebody may fall into that waterway, like a day like today. But also if the encampment is right next to traffic and it's unprotected from a vehicle and it's right next to a highway, or if the encampment is accessed by crossing a highway in an area where pedestrians shouldn't be. Those are all instances where we have to respond as soon as possible, try to provide outreach to the unsheltered, but we have to remove them from that location. There are many other locations where those instances are not applicable. And then we work with the outreach teams like Hafsa's or the ones that are the other cities or the county provide. Try to do as much outreach as we can before we remove them, because like I said, otherwise we're playing a shuffling issue, and we're just moving them from one place to the other, and we're not really solving the problem. So I really want to thank the mayor again, Mayor Gloria, and the city of San Diego for recognizing the issue and also dedicating resources and helping putting to action some of the resources that the state, that the governor and the legislature have put, so that at the local level some of these issues can be tackled. With our forces, what we do, just to reiterate, when we are aware of an encampment and after we do that assessment, we work with the CHP and the local services for the removal. We have hazmat contractors that will take care of the hazmat items that are on the encampment. We ask the unsheltered population to take their belongings with them when they move. Anything that is left behind that could be of value, we preserve and we keep for a number of days. And in the notices that we put out, we let people know where they can claim their stuff. Anything that is not an item of value will be removed and discarded off by maintenance forces. So that's kind of how we deal with encampments.
Okay, thank you, Gustavo. I see Hafsa has her hand up.
Unmute. There we go. Mayor Blacksberry, I just want to say thank you so much for having this topic and to the whole panel. And Gustavo, thank you for all the efforts from your department. And Lahala, the regional plan is so incredibly important, and we are also coordinated and working on this together. I think that's what it really takes. I did want to say one very more important thing in terms of encampment movements is that storage and persons and their belongings, persons, places, and pets, right? Their belongings. So it's really important to acknowledge that the city does have a storage connect for persons experiencing homelessness where they can take their items as well. So that's something that I just am happy to give more information about. If there's anybody who's interested in some of the programs and resources, I know a couple of cities have already reached out, and I really appreciate that. I'm always welcome to get on a call with you. So just really emphasizing some of the additional infrastructure needed in terms of capacity to help move along this initiative as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Mendoza.
Hi. Should I turn my camera on? I'm in my car.
It's totally up to you. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we are the Litter Abatement Committee, and one issue, that we've all seen around the homeless encampments is the amount of litter that's left behind. And moving, like you said, moving at the encampments isn't always a solution because they're just going to crop up somewhere else. But I've often thought, maybe we should be strategically placing some trash containers, although then that can cause its own problems. And portable restrooms and hand washing stations, because these folks aren't just going to disappear. Sometimes in some of our cities, we hope they do just cross over into the next city line, but that's not solving the problem at all. But the trash, addressing the trash and the litter, particularly, and I'm addressing this to Caltrans because within our own jurisdictions, we're trying to deal with that ourselves. But on there's a lot of litter left behind on the Caltrans right away. So I'm just wondering if you have any plans of how you're going to be addressing that.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up, Councilmember Mendoza. So a couple of thoughts. One is the encampments that are not removed because we're doing outreach. Those are routinely cleaned by Caltrans forces, including our hazmat contractors. So we do go around our state right away, and we obviously clean encampments as they're removed, but we also clean the ones that are not removed or they're in the process of being removed. We also sometimes, as we engage the occupants of the encampments, we provide them with bags, and we ask them to put their trash in a bag, and then we'll come by and pick it up. Like you mentioned, starting to put dumpsters and things like that could be tricky. and may encourage maybe unintended results. But we do clean encampments, even if we're not removing them, and we also work with the unsheltered population to try to keep them as clean as we can.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'll just say sort of in a summary type way that I think we all have experienced the reality that unsheltered encampments create a lot of litter, and especially in the Caltrans right of way, but in other places. And so, you know, when we're talking about as a litter abatement subcommittee, like what could we be doing more of? What is the strategic approach? What, you know, and we know that homelessness is multifactorial, and it's very difficult to solve, and there are a lot of people working on it at a lot of levels. But you know, to the extent, I don't know if I'm really walking away with anything that like is an action item, or that I'm hearing that is going to be different or improve things, or you know, if there's anything that you want to say about it seems like we struggle underneath some of the regulations around like the amount of time that you need before you can clean up things, because there's this possession issue of like, you can't get rid of stuff because that someone might come back for it. And so we can end up for long periods with encampment stuff that's left and not cleaned up, even when people aren't no longer there. And I don't know if that you see that changing in a regulatory way, or in some ways it's the sheriff's approach. So that's their interpretation of the Boise case. And, you know, there's a lot of different things that are going into how we as a county respond to this. So I don't know if you want to address any of that, Gustavo or anybody.
Well, from the state perspective, and from our experience, it is very obvious when an encampment is abandoned. And when an encampment is abandoned, usually the items left behind are not of any value, and it is just litter. And we routinely clean abandoned encampments. Our forces can tell when an abandoned encampment is active, and you know, we typically then that's when we engage the occupants with the services and the notices, and making sure that all of the valuables are protected and the rights are protected. But from our standpoint, it's pretty obvious when an encampment is abandoned and it just becomes trash, and then we just go ahead and remove it.
Okay. Okay. Does anybody else want to say anything about from the litter abatement subcommittee on this topic?
I think, Mayor, I think, you know, as someone who's new to this role, I like you, feel like sometimes things are not moving fast enough. But I think for the first time, you have state, county, and local folks all talking to each other, and we've made a little bit more movement in 8 months than in a long time. So I just want to say, I'm hopeful, especially because in our case for the county, we are investing a lot of dollars and really looking at making sure that we are partners in this process, and not just coming in and saying, okay, we're going to do that, you do that. Like we're not in silos anymore, because we have a whole new department. I think people are working together, and I serve as the vice chair of the continuum of care. And I'm telling you, you know, sometimes it doesn't move fast enough. Absolutely, sure, for sure. But I feel like I think things are aligned, and we have to keep putting pressure and getting this work done. And I think it's a priority for all of us, and we're going to keep moving forward with that. So anyway, just leaving you with a little bit of hope, if I can.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. You know, I'll just kind of repeat what I had said this morning on a meeting that I had, which is that I know that there's a lot of groundwork that's being laid right now, but I really do hope that the county's role can be strong leadership to say, we are building mental health beds and detox and supportive housing, and we have an idea of what hotels to buy or what places that we can access this state money. Because my experience so far is that it's a circular conversation of coming back to the city to say, well, what do you have available? What properties do you already own? What can you guys do? And in many ways, there are just a lot of really difficult on the ground political and social decision making that makes it not likely that this problem is going to be solved by just looking back to each city to say, what are you doing? And so we know that at the county level, the money's coming through, you have the bandwidth and the expertise, and you can hire staff that really work in this area. And obviously, like, we don't build mental health beds as a city. And so we're like you said, finally having a conversation. So it's like, it's good because there's finally a way to have a dialogue, and it seems like we actually have a similar goal now, but it's still like really unclear that there's a path forward that looks a lot different than the current present. And in many ways, more and more people continue to fall into homelessness at a faster rate than people are coming out of it, or that we're preventing it. And I feel really proud of like our safe parking program that's homeless prevention, get people back up into housing before they fall into street homelessness. But it's just really so incremental and small that I just am the muscular response from the county that I'm hoping for. I know that you're working on it, and I just want to continue to say thank you and do it, from the sidelines. Like, please keep it up, because otherwise I just don't think it's going to happen if it doesn't come from the level that you're at. I'm going to call my two colleagues who have their hands up. So Mayor Huebner.
Yeah, I'd like to second what you're saying, because I've been on a number of calls and Zooms with about homelessness, and a city of the size of Solana Beach, we're smaller than one district in Encinitas. And so we don't have the real estate resources, and we don't have a lot of things to be able to solve our problem on our own. So I'm just like to encourage the county to help these people who, we are seeing more and more often, not only unsheltered, but also sheltered in cars and nowhere to go, but moving from place to place. And we hear from the neighbors who are concerned. And because of Boise, we have issues of how to address this. And we're thankful for the what is it called? The MSRP, the social workers who are going to be working next week in North County Coastal. But we really, we have the desire, we have the problem, we just don't have the resources. So if we can work together to get this done, to help these folks who are seeing more and more of a North County Coastal, I would really, really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Green.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor Blakespear. And I also want to thank you, Supervisor Vargas. From a City of Vista perspective, we've been working with the county a lot. We have the county court facility here in our city, and homelessness is an issue here. And from a city perspective, we just had the new CSU open here, the Crisis Stabilization Unit through Exodus, and the county basically brought that. I know Supervisor Desmond and the whole team over there worked hard to bring that to us, which we're hoping is a resource. And I know this is the Litter Abatement Committee, but this conversation couldn't have come at a better time for me. Tomorrow night, we're actually having a conversation with the council on permanent low to no barrier housing shelters within our city. And I know one of the slides that came up is housing ends homelessness. And that's something I think every city needs to kind of take possession of and work towards. So I appreciate that. And another thing, as far as not working in silos, I didn't even know who Gustavo was until this Litter Abatement Committee was formed. So just knowing who to talk to down there to get action, on this Caltrans corridor, because it really is something that city officials, we, can't solve, and we get a lot of calls in our community. So this abatement community has been great, and I appreciate the insight, and I really do appreciate everybody working together. And I see the change on the ground, and I also see a lot of change in the future with all the electeds who are fired up to work hard and represent their communities, and that's what it's all about. So thank you so much. I get excited anytime I work with you guys because I see us making change, and I really appreciate it. So.
Well, thank you, council member. It's great to hear that you're going to be talking about a low barrier shelter in your city at your council meeting. That's awesome. Congratulations. I hope you can get to 3 votes. So I see that Lahila has her hand up, so go ahead.
I just wanted to address some of the housing kind of comments that you had made earlier as well, and what we do for the COC and some of those pieces, and like the safe parking lot, right? And that's kind of where our role has lied in San Diego at the last couple of years too, is to kind of use some of those funding for some of those other projects that sometimes can't get funded by our partners, right, for a variety of reasons. And so we funded, right, the safe parking lot in Encinitas, and we funded one in the city, and we have, you know, funded a flexible housing pool, because you're right, but part of the challenge is that you can clear the encampment, right, and you can pick up, but then where do folks go? And if we're just moving them around, we have to have other housing options. And so I just want to mention a couple of things in case folks aren't aware of things that we're trying to work towards and expand. Are utilizing our current rental market, right? Because we know that to build housing will take time. Unfortunately, leveraging all of those funds for affordable housing projects can take quite a bit of time. Obviously, Project Home Key is a great, you know, we've had some of that success in our community, and there are some projects on the table and in conversation for additional funding that the state has released. And then we also administer a flexible housing pool, which is in some of your cities now that we've partnered with. And that's to utilize the rental market, because that is a conversation that needs to happen as well, is how do we do a better job of that so that we have folks that can move into housing that's in our community. And so, you know, for that project, and again, while it's small numbers, it is still, right, folks that we've housed. And in that, you know, we targeted 140 households in the first year. And in about a 6 months time, we housed 240 units and secured almost 300 units in our rental market. And so while we oftentimes say there aren't units, the goal of the flexible housing pool is to secure units in your communities that do exist, but oftentimes are hard for our folks who are unsheltered to secure that housing on their own. So that's another mechanism in which we've partnered. The county put funding into that. RTFH used $1.8 million of our state funding, and we will continue to fund that at this point with the state dollars, because we do believe it's critical to all of our communities to have that resource to utilize housing in the rental market. So I just wanted to elevate that a little bit too, to your point of like, what is the housing? And we need more of it, and we need more beds, and we need more, right, for all of the different populations that are currently unsheltered. So just wanted to flag a few of those things for you folks too that are happening in many of your cities as well. And we just want to do more of it. We want to use the funding, right, to expand those and to do more so that we have housing options for folks.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Thank you to the panelists, and also thank you, Supervisor Vargas, for being on this committee, for working on this topic of the unsheltered population and all the many topics that you're leading at the county. You know, we are so grateful and in awe of your energy and commitment. And so really, thank you. I know it can feel like you're always taking criticism and feedback. And so I just want to recognize that we know it's hard and there's always a desire for the county to do more. So I have heard that unfortunately we had some technical problems and we were unable to get the vote from the item at the beginning that we took a vote on, which was just approval of the minutes. So I think Francesca wants us to redo that and also ask if there are any public comments on that item and these other items. So Francesca, do you want to, if there are public comments, let's go ahead and take those public comments and then also redo the vote on item number 2.
Thank you, Chair, and my apologies to the committee. We had some technical issues with the posting of the minutes, and so we just wanted to make sure that the public and everyone had a chance to review them. So we would like to go ahead and redo the vote if that's okay, and then we should be good. So for the City of Encinitas, Chair Blakespear?
Yes.
Thank you. For the City of Imperial Beach, Mayor Dedina? I
think he left. He told me.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. The City of Imperial Beach is absent. For the City of Lemon Grove, Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Thank you. For the City of National, the City of National City is absent. For the City of Poway, Councilmember Frank?
Yes.
Thank you. For the City of San Diego, Councilmember Moreno is still absent as well? Yes. The City of San Diego is absent. For the County of San Diego, Supervisor Vargas?
Vargas, yes.
Thank you. For the City of San Marcos, Councilmember Musgrove?
Musgrove, yes.
Thank you. For the City of Solana Beach, Mayor Huebner?
Huebner, yes.
Thank you. For the City of Vista, Councilmember Green?
Green, aye.
Thank you very much. And that item does pass with those members present. Thank you all for indulging me there for a moment.
Okay, thank you. Then I'm going to ask if there are any public comments on any of these items today, but then I also just want to ask board members if there's any topic that you think this litter abatement subcommittee should cover. So this, homelessness and the unsheltered population and litter was something that we had a request for from the committee members. And so if you're curious about anything, please let us know. So you can think about it for a second and then put your hand up if you want to say anything. And do we have any public comments, Francesca?
No, Chair, there have been no hands raised from the public throughout the meeting.
Okay. And what about member comments? Does anyone else want to make a comment? I think one thing that I'm hoping that we can hear back from Caltrans about in the future, it relates to, there's a lot of state money and we want to make sure that we get it in this county. So making sure that we have the applications in, that we have the partnerships with the cities that are necessary, that we are able to draw at least our fair share, if not more, into this part of the county, I think is a really high priority. So I know that I had heard this sort of analysis of this year's budget at the state level, which was that the budget was passed without having had a lot of detailed information about how that money should be spent. So that leaves it to the regulatory agencies to make more decisions about how money is divided or the process by which money is accessed. And so I think that what to me, when I hear that, what it seems like is something like Caltrans in our District 11, that we can influence how aggressive we are at trying to access that money, unless it's per capita or something that's just happening automatically. But I would really like to hear some, additional details on the programs that are that this 60 million, or I forget the total amount, but that all that money, how we're going to get it into this county. So I know that's not something that you're able to answer now and we're out of time, but so for future meetings, that's something that I would really like to be able to understand a little bit better. And let's see, I don't see anyone else's hand up. So I think that we'll give you 7 minutes of your life back and adjourn this meeting a little bit early, and thank everybody so much for their time. And our next meeting is not in 2 weeks. We will be rescheduling that for a future date. So just so you know that that November date is no longer a meeting, November 8th. Okay, so thank you. And with that, we are adjourned.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mayor. Have a great night.